Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for being in this webinar. Um, so, on behalf of the Urban Lab Foundation and the Urban Lab, I really welcome you all formally to this webinar titled Augmenting Cycle Infrastructure Design, Feasibility of Median Cycle Track. So let me also first introduce about the Urban Lab Foundation and the Urban Lab. Urban Lab Foundation was formed in 2022, and it is an NGO set up with the purpose of creating safer, inclusive, and resilient cities. So it was envisaged as a think tank, which will enable knowledge-backed research to enable discussions, policies, and practices. It also intends to extend the support in policy making through discussions like this. We are having this webinar, and then the observations and learnings that we have, we will definitely take it forward. So this is also one of the intention that the Urban Lab Foundation has. The Urban Lab was formed in 2015 and is actually providing professional services for creating architecture and interior projects, placemaking, transport and traffic planning, and policy and urban management, and including project management and everything. So this is the background the Urban Lab and the Urban Lab Foundation has. My name is Anand Sutaria, and I'm an architect and a transport planner. I am also one of the co-founder of the Urban Lab, and I will be anchoring today's webinar. So let me take you through how the webinar will go and maybe recreate its intention. Let me start a little bit of the background that how we come across or how we have come to discuss this topic with a larger audience. I've been involved in these kind of street design projects for more than 16 years now, and in different cities in India like Ahmedabad, Vadodara, Surat, Hubli, Dharwad, Mumbai, and some of them have implemented, some of them have not. But the challenges and reasons behind integrating cycle tracks in street design was always there. So when I came across this concept of having cycle tracks in the middle of the street, it reminded me the work we have done while we were designing the BRTS in Indian cities, especially in Ahmedabad, having a bus lane in the middle of the street. So we thought as a team that it would be interesting to take this concept to a larger audience and have experts who can discuss its pros and cons. So this is how we intend to float a webinar and then have you all to have a dialogue among us and come up with something, or we may or may not have the solution, but at least we all will be definitely more aware the possibilities of in the cycle infrastructure design. There are three parts of this webinar. In the first part, we will have two presentations, one by Melissa Bruntlet, who is our expert speaker from the Netherlands, and one is from Aviral, who is an urban designer from the Urban Lab. In the second part, we will have panel discussion, where we have 7 panelists from various user groups, NGOs, think tanks, design consultants, bike operators. I will introduce them once we have, we will start the panel discussion. Then in the third part, or at the end, we will have question and answer session where we will open the stage for the audience. I request the audience, maybe you can write your questions in the chat also. Parallelly, we are keeping note of it. So if you have questions during the presentation, I request you to write already in the chat so that we can attend or address it during the question and answer sessions. So now let's start the proceedings. I would like to introduce Melissa Bruntlet as our keynote speaker for today. So Melissa Bruntlet is an author. She has published 2 books. One is called Building the Cycling City, the Dutch Blueprint for Urban Vitality, and second is Curbing Traffic, the Human Case for Fewer Cars in Our Lives. So as a mobility consultant, sustainable mobility consultant, Melissa uses her experience and expertise to help partners and her clients better understand how a sustainable and just mobility transition needs to recognize the varied needs of people. So her USP is taking the conversations at an empathetic level. So Melissa works collaboratively to bring an empathetic approach to mobility policy and planning. Uh, then the goal is to better build awareness of why an empathetic approach to mobility is necessary to create inclusive cities. I think, Melissa, that's a great way of being while in this sector. We all know that how government works, how the market works, and your approach, I think, give us a whole new perspective. So we are eager to listen to you. I'm going to unmute you again, and I will make you host now so that you can share your screen. Give me a moment.
Perfect. You can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful.
And I think now you can share your screen too.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So with that, I will get started. Thank you, Anand, for the introduction. And yes, so when I was invited to come and present for this webinar, I was trying to think how I would best approach the topic, because I don't come into this field as a designer, but rather someone that works more on the policy and strategy level. And so what I hope to do is present a bit of the reason why you all are doing the work you're doing and who benefits from it, and then pass it over to my more technical colleague who will provide a presentation on some of the more infrastructure related content, but hopefully the two can complement each other well. So as Anand indicated, I'm going to give you the case for empathetic mobility and this idea of reshaping the conversation of why an equitable approach is important. And I am now going, there we go. There. So yeah, as was indicated, I work in sustainable mobility. I work for a Dutch consultancy called Royal Haskoning DHV, but they also work internationally. And so my work sort of straddles both Dutch and international projects, again, focusing on equity and inclusion from an empathetic perspective and helping people who are drafting mobility policies really think, okay, what does an inclusion practice look like and what do we need to be thinking about? And so it's an exciting space to be in, to sort of challenge people, but also find ways that are really helping to benefit as much of their population as possible. And I realized I was going to turn on my timer so I don't go over time. There we go. So why an empathetic approach? Really, it's about tackling groups that have been historically left out of conversations. It's very close to inclusion in terms of how we're discussing mobility. And thinking about these impacts beyond just limited access. So often when we're talking about inclusion, we think of people with disabilities, we sort of narrow the scope. And the idea behind empathy is to rather think about everyone in our mobility system and how they use the system, why they use it the way they do, and then start to challenge ourselves. How can we make people move outside of what the status quo is? And it really starts with asking, where are the opportunities to deliver positive contribution to society? How can we change things so that the stress that you see on the screen right now can be shifted to something that's a little more approachable for all the people that use our mobility systems? Because our feelings really dictate our behavior. How we feel in mobility, how we feel in public space impacts how we choose to move through public space. And so rather than thinking that feelings are a nice thing to think about, and we want people to feel good, but it's more important about things being structured, we have to recognize that those feelings will impact how they use the structure we're designing. So keeping that in mind. And so again, this looks at it from the invisible impacts of mobility in terms of physical health, mental health, but also social health. And I'm going to discuss that today in this presentation. And looking at it from 4 key areas of focus, one being age equity, how are children and seniors and everyone in between accessing mobility, gender equity, of course, thinking about how women and people who identify as non-binary experience systems, but also how men experience systems as well, access, and then also social cohesion and how we feel comfortable in space. So with this, we always start when we're having these discussions with the child-friendly city, because it's how we all first start to experience our cities, and really focus on how can we inspire autonomy. In a lot of conversations, there's talk of, okay, we need to get more children, for example, walking or cycling to school. But there's all these fears around it, or we need kids to be outside more. And so how can mobility help inspire getting outside and inspire autonomy? Because where we find ourselves now is we've very much been designing much more for the backseat generation. And by backseat, I mean backseat of a car, backseat of a bicycle. But autocentric planning has really made it so parents, caregivers feel that they need to be the sphere of control for children to make sure that they're kept safe. And that means that they're not having as much opportunity to move independently. And that's having knock-on effects on physical activity, but also mental health in terms of a diminished realm. So children are not as active. The numbers that you see are from Europe, but similar numbers globally of an obesity epidemic, but also a mental health epidemic for children where they feel disconnected socially from their community. And active transportation and social transportation can help to decrease some of those barriers and really help develop autonomous and resilient children. And so that's done through things like traffic calming or integration of sustainable modes, where you can have safe routes to school for walking or safe routes to playgrounds to play, allowing children to cycle independently, but that requires creating a safe environment to do so. And what I've had the privilege of experiencing moving here with my children is being part of this network where 2/3 of Dutch children walk and cycle to school. High school children continue to cycle to school in very large numbers. And that's very positive, not only in terms of independent mobility, but also in terms of risk development, because we all need those important moments in our lives to learn what are our limits, where is it too far to go in terms of our safety and our comfort, and then learning from those to then better adapt as we get into adulthood and eventually old age. Which takes me to the next topic, which is the aging city. And how do we design for mobility in a way that allows our seniors to age in place, to have that dignity, to feel that they're a part of their community for a longer period of time. And what we see generally is as we age, there's this decrease in mobility, but also an increase in isolation. So we are less able to move as nimbly as we might have when we were in our younger years. But we're also watching as our social realm in terms of our peers start to pass away. It's an inevitable stage of life. But what's missing from that is that we can also create intergenerational opportunities to connect, which helps to diminish feelings of depression, feelings of isolation, anxiety, the feeling that we need to institutionalize our seniors in order for them to have good care. And we can do that by thinking about street life, by thinking about how do we integrate them into an equitable access to public space and to mobility. And so this is about creating opportunities for face-to-face contact, which is releasing oxytocin, which is a feel-good hormone. It makes us feel happier. It makes us feel like we want to smile and be around people, but it also has positive health impacts because our internal organs are not in this constant state of fight or flight. And that's really important, not just for everybody, but especially for our seniors. And we can do this through creating walkable neighborhoods, by creating cycling infrastructure that is safe for people who may not be as balanced anymore in how they move, maybe are a little bit slower. These are all things that we need to think about to give our seniors the dignity to remain a part of our communities and a part of our social systems. Moving on from there, in terms of looking at the gender aspect, one of the conversations that's really big is and really important is thinking about care work and social safety. What that really looks like is taking a more gender responsive approach to mobility. So women are still predominantly doing the care work. For those that might be unfamiliar with that in our call today, those are all the jobs that we do that are not paid. So taking children to various activities into school, looking after family, running errands such as groceries, all these tasks that we do that we don't receive a salary for. And Often these are done in trip chaining, they're done not necessarily in a car. And so the more that we can design a mobility system that reflects these mobility patterns, the more we can make it gender equitable so that women feel that they have the same access to mobility to perform all of the works that they do. And that's done by trip chaining. I often refer to it as a web of mobility. So often when we're planning for transportation, we're thinking of the route from A to B, from home to work, very economically driven. But rather, when we're talking about mobilities of care, we're talking about trips from home to work, to childcare, to shopping, and then back to home again. And so the network needs to be quite woven together, especially a sustainable mobility network, to allow for all those trips to be done easily and comfortably and give everyone, not just women, a comfortable option for moving through their cities. At the same time, we need to be thinking about social safety. There are spaces in our cities that feel uncomfortable. I've had the privilege to do quite a few conversations with Safety Pin and talking about dark zones and the important role that we as planners and policymakers can have in addressing where people feel unsafe and therefore where people won't travel and thus limiting their mobility. So thinking about dark areas without lighting, thinking about the fear of violence and how that influences our mobility, and making sure that those experiences are brought in to the mobility planning conversation, both through thinking about policy, but also by involving women in the conversations as well to help understand through experience how cities can be designed better. And of course, inclusion is another big topic that needs to be addressed. We need to be thinking about how we're moving from disabling to enabling environments. And when I refer to disabling, I mean that environments that limit someone's access simply because they move around the city differently. And unfortunately, autocentricity is exacerbated this in a lot of our cities. But it comes along with this argument around the myth of car access. And oftentimes what I hear a lot in Europe and North America is that if we take away parking, if we take away car access, we're taking away access for people with disabilities. And often the case is very much the opposite, in that these people need choices to move around in adapted machines, in adapted bicycles. They need good walking, safe walking that connects with public transportation. But the problem is that we're not counting, we take a lot of data, but we're not counting the trips that people aren't taking because of that limited access. And so we need to uncouple car access with disability and think of them more as how can we cater to this group with various disabilities in a way that gives them more choices. And so that requires recognizing the different machines, recognizing that we're all on a scale from well to unwell, and over our lifetime, our mobility needs will change. And so prioritizing active mobility connected with public transportation is the way that we're going to make sure that all of our citizens, regardless of physical, visual, or mental health ability, have the same access to our city. And that's, again, this idea of empathy, is thinking beyond just us, or thinking even of our own lifetime, how that might change and how we can ensure that no matter what age we are still a part of the mobility system. And then finally, looking at the social city, all of these plannings and policies towards walking, towards cycling, towards good public space design, towards public transportation are all about in some way connecting our ability to connect with each other when we're in mobility. When we're in a car, we're connected with only the people in the vehicle with us. Whereas when we move around much more socially in a much more human way, we can help to restore some of that social aspect to our city. And what often happens is as we start designing for heavier and heavier traffic, like the image on the top there on the left-hand side, we actually reduce the desire to spend time in public space, and we therefore reduce the social connection in our cities. The fast-moving traffic creates noise, creates stress, creates unsafe situations, and so we retreat from it, oftentimes living in the backs of our homes or relying on privatized public space in order to have enjoyment together. And so when we are talking about creating an empathetic sort of approach to mobility, it's also about building this social connection back in, starting to move towards light traffic environments or no traffic in some spaces, car traffic, then we can allow people spaces where they can talk, where they can connect, where they can hear, each other. And those are really important in terms of bringing enjoyment, therapeutic connection, moments of just clarity back into our public spaces. It also helps to increase trust. If we see people outside of our proverbial bubble, as well as our friends, we can start to trust our communities more. We can have more pride in those spaces. And so this is what I kind of like to reinforce with this presentation is that, you know, empathetic mobility is about how we move, but it's also about creating quality of places to stay as well, so that we can build kindness and social connection back into our cities. So then, with the last few moments I have, I just want to provide a few considerations for the conversation later around the design of median cycle tracks. And I use the example from Bogota, which I was able to travel to a couple of years ago, who have implemented median cycle tracks in a lot of their cycling network. As Anand pointed out, it's easy in some ways to take this space in the center. So some things to consider is how do we organize intersections, because this does create a few conflict points that maybe we're not thinking about when we think of the ease of implementation. What happens when we get off of this cycle track? And also making sure there's enough room for growth. The idea is we want to get more people on bikes. So if we're putting it in the middle, does that limit us in terms of how we can inspire future growth of cycling? Also making it attractive, thinking about how we incorporate green, but also incorporating shade, especially in the context of India. Knowing what I know about with the recent heat waves in a lot of places, you know, how do we build a mobility system that allows for shade, that makes it more comfortable to use all year round? And finally, mixing with other modalities. So thinking about where scooters might fit into this, other types of bicycles, tricycles, which there's a few photos that I've shared already. How do they fit into this space so that everyone can be comfortable in what we're essentially designing is a safe, hopefully a safer cycling network. So with that, I close with that an empathetic approach has the ability to make us happier in our cities if we take a really meaningful approach to how we can make sure that as many people enjoy what we're trying to do as possible. And then if you have questions that we don't get to today and would like to reach out further, here's a way to reach me. I'm always happy to try to help where I can and think along, and I look forward to the conversation. And I stayed within time.
Perfect, Melissa. Thank you so much. Couldn't have asked for the better start of the webinar. Thank you for setting up the stage so nicely that, you know, we can have the discussion, the fruitful discussion further.
My pleasure.
Yeah. I will now introduce Aviral. Aviral is an urban designer from the Urban Lab. He has over 8 years of experience. He has worked on various urban design projects in Bhuj, in Ahmedabad, in Gandhinagar, Bangalore, Jaipur, and many other Indian cities. His experience in urban design projects, placemaking, and street design has gained him recognition in various stakeholders group, especially in the urban local bodies, where he advocates and proposes NMT-friendly solutions. Being a cyclist himself, he's keen on working to make our cities cycle-friendly. And today he will be presenting some of the initial ideas and concepts on designing a cycle track in the median. So Aviral, over to you. I will make you the host and you can share your screen.
Thank you, Anand. And
can you share your screen, Aviral? Yeah.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Your voice is also a little low. Speaker.
Oh, thank you, Anand. And thank you, Melissa, for the presentation. I again welcome you all to the first session of the Urban Lab Foundation webinar series. And in this session, we'll be talking about the feasibility of median cycle tracks. I would like to start my presentation by saying that we all love cycling. And that is probably the reason why we all are here. And we would want to see more cycles on our street. Now, in order to realize cycling as a valid commute option, our cities have to invest in cycling infrastructure and also upgrade them. Now, this basically provides priority and comfort. They should provide priority and comfort to the cyclist. So we can do this by providing dedicated and protected cycle tracks, ensuring that the cycle tracks are shaded for thermal comfort. As per the requirement and design, they can be one-way and two-way. They should be well lit and obstruction free. And we see that time to time Indian cities have created some of these. So for example, in Knowledge Hub, we designed around 5.5 kilometers of cycle track, and it's functioning quite well. Again, Bangalore has done some work, Moti Bagh, Delhi, again by Oasis. And some of these are really high quality urban spaces, similarly Mumbai and Chandigarh. But these spaces are exceptions, and we are still struggling to implement cycle tracks. And whenever we go to policymakers and decision makers to ask for more cycle infrastructure, they simply ask us, how many cyclists do you see on these cycle tracks which you have been asking for? So that is a valid question, and we have to identify what are the challenges, and from the point of view of user. So in most of the cases we have seen, they are conventional cycle tracks which are segregated, and they are on the property side, which means they are on the either side of the road. And this creates some of the issues which are detrimental to the success of a cycle track. For example, in this case, this is a cycle track by parking. Similarly, in this case, in most of the stretch, the cycle track is provided by a curb, but at the property entrances, the cycle track being open is used as a drop. Again, street vending sometimes takes the space, and the property entrances, private sector, they sometimes they do these kind of stuff, and multiple property entrances. So even if there is no parking which is taking the space at the cycle tracks, a cyclist has to route through these lines of bollards, and which basically reduces their speed and their convenience. So they prefer to use the mixed traffic lanes. Again, discontinuous cycle tracks. So the cycle track is coming here, and at the junction, it just vanishes. And there is no continuous cycle track across the junction also. Apart than that, generally, most of our streets are sloped or cambered towards the property side. So during monsoons, there is a chance that they may get flooded, and uh, this also discourages the cyclists. So having seen these, we know that with it, and we were thinking median cycle track can work. Will it be better or will it be like this? And there would be other issues with it, but and that is the reason why we are here, to objectively think. We did a few case studies, and this is from Bogota. And in this, we see that the cycle track is protected by a temporary separator. In the next, and this is Washington. In this, there is a buffer which is provided, and it is by lane marking and permanent bollards. And this is the main route going towards the Capitol Hill, Prominent Street. Again, this is Barcelona. We have a permanent landscape stripe, which is protected, and civil. It in street and going to
So Aviral, your voice is breaking.
okay, hold on. Hello, is it fine now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we were at the civil case study. We were seeing that the cycle track is like moving through a linear garden through the city. And in the end, we again come back to Bogota, where they have experimented with a roundabout, where the vehicles will have to take uh, the round, and the cycles are allowed to pass through it. And we noted that these median cycle tracks, wherever we have seen, they are limited to a few kilometers or even shorter stretches. We do not see a network of median cycle tracks in the global context. Coming to the design ideas, we should understand that in India the average trip length is around 4.5 kilometers. This means that a cyclist will have to cross 8 junctions. If we understand that there would be uh, half a kilometer junction after every half a kilometer. And we would be discussing street sections of various right-of-ways, 30 meter, 36 meter, and 40 meters. Apart than that, we would be discussing uh, sections where we will be seeing if there is an existing median, how do we go about it? If there is a metro corridor, or if there is a BRT lane, how do we accommodate median cycle track? Apart than that, we would be also uh, seeing how can a junction box at junction work and a roundabout type of junction. So coming to 30 meters, we a 4 meter wide two-way cycle segregate by there are
We lost you again.
hello hello,
Yeah.
is it
can hear
am
you.
I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this
No, we lost you again.
yeah am I audible now?
Yeah, just check your internet connection.
Yeah. So yeah, in this section we have a 4 meter wide cycle track and a buffer of 1 meter wide multi-utility zone, 3 lane carriageway, and footpath. So these multi-utility zone can be used for uh, trees, landscape, and utilities and street lights. This will also protect the cyclist from the mixed traffic lane. And then at the junction, uh, here we are exploring the option how a cycle box would work. And in this case, we'll see that a cyclist who is either coming from the median lane or from the origin of his of the journey, they may they may reach the cycle box, and with the regular signal cycle, they may go on their direction. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then this is the 30-meter right-of-way section again. And in most of our streets, we already have a median, and they have trees and utilities and street lights. So this is in this option, we have tried to retain it. And again, we have a 2 meter wide cycle track on either side and half a meter buffer with a railing, which protects it from the main carriageways. And we have wide footpaths at the edges. Here we have taken the straight alignment of the cycle at the junction. And depending upon the requirement, again, a cycle box typology can be used. If there is a metro corridor passing along the road, then this is one of the section. As you may know, in most of the Indian cities, metro corridors are elevated, which means that at regular intervals, there would be pillars which will be coming. So area, which includes the buffer zone for the metro pillar. We have 2 meter cycle tracks on either side, and 1 meter wide multi-utility zone on the both of the sides. We have two-lane road and then footpath. And in some of the cases, we have a metro pillar right at the center of the junction. So in this case, we have tried to create a small roundabout. And in this case, cyclist will be we would require a dedicated signal for cyclists to pass through. This is the 36-meter street section. And in this, we have again 4-meter wide cycle track, 1-meter wide multi-utility zone, and then 3 lanes of carriageways and footpath. In this junction, we have tried to create a cycle track at the periphery and in a circular shape. In this case, when the signal cycle is up for the cyclist, he can easily navigate the roundabout. And if he gets hold up at one of the arms, there is an additional space for holding cyclist, this light pink area. This is the 40-meter section where again we have a 4-meter wide two-way cycle track, 1-meter wide multi-utility zone, 3 lane for mixed traffic, parallel parking, and again some green area and footpath. In this section, we have tried that Bogota example where the cycles can pass through the roundabout and the vehicles have to go around it. And this also acts as a holding area for the cyclist. We can provide two
Yeah, we lost you.
hello. Audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can provide 2 signal cycles for cycle crossings. This is another 40-meter right of way where we already have a BRTS lane. And the BRTS lane is separated by the cycle track by 0.5 meter of buffer with railing. And have border and multi-utility zone, which protects it from the mixed traffic lane. We have on the edges. In this case, as per the of all the so as per the design and hello.
Yeah, go on, please.
Hello. So as per the requirement and the design, we can go in for the type of junction which we require from the above, which we have already discussed. So there are few issues which are likely to come. The first one is the access to property, and the second is protection from mixed traffic. So we understand that at every half kilometer there is a junction averagely, and we generally provide a pedestrian crossover at every maybe 180 meters to 250 meters. So the cyclist can use that pedestrian crossing, to access the footpath and walk till their uh, destination or get into the mixed traffic lane. So this last part will have to be, he will have to navigate on his own. Then the second one is protection from mixed traffic. So it is highly imperative that these multi-utility zone are provided. This acts as a buffer and provides safety from the mixed traffic lane, which may be at higher speeds, and also provides space for providing trees and other shading devices and utilities. So, yeah, so this is the presentation. Over to Anand. Thanks.
Thank you, Aviral. Thank you for showing us the possibilities with the design of the median cycle track. So this is the end of the first part where we had two presentations. One showed us how we should approach the design of cycle infrastructure, and the second one was actually talking about some options. Now let's move to the second part where we are having a panel discussion. We have 7 esteemed panelists with us. I will be unmuting them one by one, and I will introducing them to the audience. Let me start with Akash Hingurani. So Akash is the principal and founder of Oasis Design Inc. And he's an architect and urbanist with extensive experience in strengthening and designing city-level projects, focusing on integrating placemaking to achieve sustainable urban places in our cities. He specializes in making walkable, cyclable, and connected to mass transit while focusing on creating people-friendly streetscapes. The projects at Oasis demonstrate how system thinking can achieve sustainable mobility and green infrastructure solutions. So Akash, we have seen the work that Oasis have done in Indian cities, and let me tell you that we all are inspired by that. And today we are eager to hear your thoughts and feedback on these idea of median cycle track.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let me now introduce Arjit Soni. Arjit is a CA by profession and founder and CEO of public bicycle sharing company My Bike. He first conceptualized My Bike in 2010 while he was barely an intern at PwC in Mumbai. So his daily commute on the Mumbai local train was actually the reason behind how he thought that, how he can the fastest way he can reach at the mass transit station and actually come up with the idea of shared bicycles in cities. So after returning to Ahmedabad, he continued to develop that idea, and the political leaders at that time actually inspired him to encourage him finally launch the My Bike as a system in Ahmedabad. It was way back in 2014, I think, Arjit. It's 10th year of introduction of the My Bike. So congratulations on that. We are eager to hear your thoughts too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me introduce to you Aswati. Just a second, I'll first unmute you. Okay. Did you get the prompt?
Yes.
Great. So Aswati is the ITDP South Asia Managing Director. And her work includes actually transforming congested roads into vibrant streets with space for all users, helping cities implement bold parking reforms and building support for high quality, sustainable mass transit. So with a keen interest in citizen engagement, she has organized car-free Sundays, intersection design testing, as well as street and public space exhibitions. So she's actually currently leading a team working on preparation of complete street toolkit for the National Smart City Mission. So it will be very interesting, Aswati, to hear your perspective on this solution, and then maybe we can actually see something realized in these kind of documents.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let me now introduce you to Dr. Bhairavi Joshi. Let me first unmute her. Bhairavi, did you get the tab? Great. So Dr. Bhairavi Joshi is actually a doctor. She's a dentist by profession and director and CEO of Bikes India Foundation. So she set up Bikes India Foundation with a vision in mind to see India transform into a cycling nation. She is also the former bicycle mayor of Valsad. She believes that if cities are fit for children to cycle and walk, then they are safe for entire community. Among other cycling activities, she has introduced a cycling curriculum which has been adopted by many schools and other bicycle mayors. So Bhairavi, this is very inspiring where you are actually making a difference with the smallest age group where we all know that the generation can learn and then they will be making the future communities. So great, and I also welcome you again. Hello. Bhairavi, are you there?
She's not unmuted.
No, she replied. Let me do it again.
Yeah, but when I unmuted again, like you have to give me access to it. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I will now maybe request all the panelists when I unmute you, keep your mic on, maybe because you will be having the conversation. So it's fine to have your mic on for a while. Yeah, thank you. Let me now introduce you to Ranjit Gadgil. So Ranjit Gadgil is the program director at Parisar NGO in Pune. This NGO advocates for sustainable development. He oversees the three main verticals at Parisar: air pollution, road safety, and sustainable mobility. Over the past decade, Parisar has successfully gotten the city to adopt a comprehensive bicycle plan, a pedestrian policy, urban street design guidelines, and was instrumental in promoting, including BRTS as a critical mobility system for Pune. So, Ranjit, the work that you have been doing is actually very inspiring because we see that not a lot of initiatives that has been started are actually implemented. So you as a cyclist know the reality as a user and then taking it forward to the policy level is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me now introduce you with Sarika. Can you hear us? Yeah. So Sarika is the director at Nagaro and co-founder of the Rahagiri Foundation and Gurugram's. She's also bicycle mayor of the Gurugram. She drives the Open Street program. She drives the Open Street program, Rahagiri Days in Haryana, and inspiring similar initiatives across India. Being a cyclist herself, her commitment extends beyond leading sustainable mobility and road safety efforts nationwide. So, Sarika, welcome. And your practical experiences in implementing these kind of Rahagiri and the car-free days will help us know your perspective.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let me introduce you to Sonal Kulkarni. She serves as the Chief Research and Innovation Officer at the DULT Bangalore. She has been involved and worked extensively in the government on infrastructure for sustainable mobility, and she led the team from the DULT Government of Karnataka in the Smart Cities Mission's Cycles for Change initiative, where Bangalore was chosen as one of the winners for planning and executing the cycling infrastructure. So congratulations, Sonal, on that. And we look forward to hear your learnings and the challenges you faced in implementing these projects. And we will have a moderator in this session who is none other than Abhijit Lokre. He's the founder and partner at the Urban Lab. So Abhijit Lokre is...
Unmute him.
He's an architect. I did.
Yeah, Anand, and I think we can move on.
Okay.
I think most of them know me.
Okay.
So we can move on, and I think because we now have about 35 minutes left.
Yeah.
We also need to have a discussion with the panelists and then also have questions from the audience.
Okay, then.
So thanks, Anand.
Over to you, Abhijit.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. And let's get right into the discussion. So, just give very quickly a background. So initially when, I kept thinking when I was designing the Ahmedabad BRTS, why haven't the cycle tracks worked? And I could see a lot of interruptions happening along the property edge. And the cycle track we had to keep breaking it to give property access. And I always wondered how we could make it better. But I always wondered, I never thought anything else could be done, because the logical thing is that cycle tracks have to be on the side. It was during COVID that I got chatting with friends. Arjit is one of them, uh, who kept pushing me to consider median cycle tracks also. And my initial reaction was, no, it doesn't work. It's a stupid idea. It doesn't work. But the more I thought about it, I thought maybe it's worth looking at this idea again. Maybe it's not that stupid as it intuitively sounds. So I said, let's actually start designing something, at least at a concept level. And then let's throw this open to a larger audience. And I know there are a lot of people who are skeptical about this. But I really want to engage even people who are skeptical, and I want to get feedback. Because once we have feedback from people, then we can get all of this together and try to solve the issues that are coming up in these questions. Because quite frankly, and as Melissa rightly pointed out, uh, we really need to look at how we can get people on cycles. The standard question is, since bicycle tracks don't work in India, it's okay not to put them. And then since they don't work on the side, then let's not have them because they don't work anyway. But I think we cannot accept this reality. And what Melissa said, I think reinforces why we need to keep on pushing. So having this background, let's get into a discussion with our panelists. And I'm going to start with Akash. So Akash has designed a number of streets in India which have cycle tracks. The most famous, which I keep referring to, is Jangli Maharaj Road, Ferguson College Road in Pune. And then there are some really good designs in Delhi. Now, my question, Akash, is now that you have the side or the property side bicycle tracks in the designs that you have done, have you gone back and actually seen whether these work? What are the issues that people face?
So I agree with you on the number of entries that happen, when cycling. I mean, the property entrances. Can you hear me?
If you could be a little louder, Akash.
Yeah. So I'm saying the property entries are obviously an issue with the side cycle track, but I would not want to, prescribe one system across the board. So what happens is you have different contexts when you're operating or when you're designing a cycle system for a city. So there could be a big road which has a large green area, which doesn't have these entries. So in fact, in Delhi, what happened was, again, the typical cross section developed for one area where they needed service road to service these individual properties was not needed when you have a huge park. Uh, so we actually convinced the authorities that this service road is not needed, and we ripped it apart. And that's also on an important road like Ring Road in Delhi. So what I'm saying is, it cannot be one size fits all. Number one. So it has to be context driven. It has to start looking at, where can we do what is the best solution in a given challenging situation. Second, I really don't mind the idea of a median cycle track. I mean, having seen the Ramla and whatever. I mean, it's very exciting to think of two cycle tracks which were thinner on either side come together to make you a wider, nice cycling corridor, which could, in fact, be thought of as a cycling highway because you could actually, achieve speeds on it. But again, like what you guys have pointed out in your PPT, I think very nicely done, that there would be challenges when you have the metro columns or when you have the BRTS system. So merging all of that together in the medium, and I mean, ideally, if there is no metro, I mean, at least no BRT, then it's easier to design. So I'm just coming in from a very like a designer perspective on it, like what kind of problems we foresee. Because somebody even in the chat has mentioned that you'll have BRTs bus stops, and then the cycle track will have to go around that, and then so the whole configuration of putting in a BRT and a cycle track may be a bit too much in the median, but a cycle track alone, with or without the metro, I think should be doable and should work fine. I don't know what the others have to say about it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. It's interesting. And I think I agree with you, obviously, that you will have to contextualize. One design is not going to work. And street design is like that, Akash, right? There is no standard way of doing it. You need to contextualize, you need to design every square centimeter of land. Okay, thanks, Akash. I think that's interesting. It could work, is what I think Akash says. We'll have to contextualize it. Ashwati, I'll come to you next. And see, you work with government, Ashwati. You work with local governments, you work with state governments, and you work with smart cities. Do you think an idea like this would have traction in the ministry, at the state government, with local governments? Anand, you'll have to unmute Ashwati. Why don't you unmute all panelists straight away?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hi, Vijit, for the question. And so, to be honest, so when we started working with the Smart Cities mission 3 years back on the Cycles for Change Challenge, one of our initial things was to share with cities what are the different kinds of solutions that they could test. So here we looked at, especially when it came for cycling, we looked at some things which we called were non-negotiable, and some other things which we said that the cities could experiment. So the non-negotiables became segregated cycle tracks. And in fact, in our guidebook that we gave to the cities, we had provided cycle tracks on the curbside and the cycle tracks on median as examples that the cities could experiment. Especially we were coming from the idea or from the concern that when you have parking, when vending, when you have bus stops, and when you have property entrances on the curbside, it does become a challenge for cyclists to have a continuous segregated cycling space. Again, intersections were also a non-negotiable that we said that the cities should look at making them safe. We had given negotiable things like cycle training clinics, cycle camps, etc. Now, after 3 years, when we looked at what the cities had done, while cities across the country, from whether it was Bangalore or Bhopal or Bhubaneswar or Srinagar, that had experimented with cycle tracks, these cycle tracks were all on the curbsides, and there were none that was during this phase that was experimented in the median side. Now, to your question, whether median does work. So I had the opportunity, like Melissa, to travel to Bogota and use the median lane cycle track as well. And it was a very, very safe and comfortable journey, and especially the intersections where you could stop along with priority cycle signals. It really made it safe for the cyclist to travel. However, two things. So one, as a cyclist who is just doing long journeys, it provided a lot of convenience. But when I want to just sort of hop around and stop by the cafes and sort of experience the city with taking a lot of breaks, these median cycle lanes were not the ones that were very useful. Now, when we came to the cities, and then when we were coming back to the Indian context and wondering, would this actually work, and why have not too many cities experimented with it? Of course, the cities, there were only a handful of cities that had experimented with the segregated curbside cycle tracks. And these were all cities whose roads were about 24 meters ROW in width. And when we looked at the cycling, when we looked at the street network across multiple cities, we realized that there was only around like, you know, like you could do a little bit of up and down, but most of the cities that we looked at, only around 20% above where the street ROWs were above 18 meters. And again, when you look at about 24 meters, it was even coming as low as 8%. So then, you know, when you're looking at having cycling network across the entire city, like Akash said, our solutions will need to be contextual. Like Melissa said, if we're looking at school children who are going to schools, college children, then we will need we will need diversity of solutions. And my main point that I'd like to say is that we don't have so many wide streets. And that's something that I just lay on the table right now and pass it back over to you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, got that. And it's very interesting that the guidebook that you talked about actually also talks about median cycle tracks. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I understand that not all our cities have really wide roads, right? But for example, I worked in Pune where they did their mega streets project, or even in Chennai, Surat, Ahmedabad. We do have potential. Yeah, but if you want to talk at a network level, obviously one design will not fit everything. You will also need to have slow streets where probably there is no segregation at all, whether on the side or in the center, and you need to only look at traffic calming as a solution to make cycling safer. Fair enough. Thanks, Ashwati. I'll go to Sarika. So Sarika,
Thank you, everyone.
yeah, you're an avid cyclist, and
Yeah.
I am talking to you also as a user, right? So I want to
Yeah.
treat it more from the user perspective. There are messages in the chat box which also talk about the safety aspect. This is something that even I always consider that safety may be an issue. What's your take on this? Safety,
Yeah.
in cycle tracks, will it work?
Yeah. So see, safety is the prime objective of having this dedicated cycle track. Right. That is why people like us, the white collar job people, are not adopting cycling that much that they should be in India. Only concern for them is safety, actually, not even weather condition. So, like I somehow agree with what Akash and Aswiti said, and even I have experienced. I have cycled 100-kilometer entire network of Bogota in 2018, and you know what I have witnessed in Bogota also. The median cycle track they have is mostly on the expressways, not inside the cities. Correct me, Melisha. In the cities, they have cycle tracks in the side, and these expressways, for you can actually cycle for around 10-12 kilometer, then only you will get a break to, in a, like, you know, and an intersection will come, and then you can divert yourself to going to a building or going to a marketplace. But mostly in Bogota also, it is the cycle tracks are in the side of the road. And I believe that, you know, as a user, first I will talk as a user. I have cycled in highways, deadly highways, going from Gurgaon to Chandigarh, cycling from Manali to Ladakh, cycling to Agra, Jaipur, etc., etc. When even little bit you go to right to take a turn, you know, when you are riding little bit to take a turn or taking to take a flyover for a U-turn or etc., it's scary because see, in India we drive on right side, like, and right side is our most, like, you know, it's the most speed corridor, like, you know. So it is one of the biggest challenge, like, you know. In fact, when I go from Gurgaon to Delhi, the my near misses are always when I was driving on the right to take a underpass or a flyover to take a U-turn, etc.
Right.
And when you are riding on right side, you will face a lot of blind spots when the vehicle is taking over, like, you know, overtaking something or something. But yeah, in expressways and where you have large green space, median space, I think their median cycling track will work like wonder when we are talking about cycling expressway, etc. But within city, it's for me, whatever I felt when I was cycling around is little scary. So that is one point. Second point also, we need to understand, as you said, every centimeter we need to design when we are designing. So there is nothing here is black and white. We need to try as per land use, the streets, what is the land use of the street, and usability, footfall, etc., etc. Accordingly, we need to design our street or a bicycle track. I'm giving you the best example of Gurgaon, the 5 kilometer cycle track and footpath we have not just designed, we have constructed ourselves. So in that, it is both sidewise cycle track and footpath. There are 94 entries and exits. It is one of the messiest street, Udyog Vihar industrial area, chaotic, like, we don't have much space. But not even a single point a cyclist will be interrupted in the street. So cyclists are cycling throughout this 2.5 kilometer. Only the vehicles are going, like, have to slow down when they're entering to the building or going out from the building. The paths are continued, okay, and no interruption to the pedestrians and cyclists. And it is doable. If it is doable in Udyog Vihar, in Gurgaon, it is doable everywhere in this country. So we need to find out different solutions where we can prioritize this kind of infrastructure development for pedestrian cyclists. And always, as Akash also mentioned, that uh, every centimeter we need to design, and considering what is the land use along the street. And another thing, I just have Carlos Pardo has put together a nice analysis on this median cycle track in his LinkedIn today. You all must go through that. So again, he has highlighted, where in Bogota it has worked and where it hasn't worked. So it is nicely narrated, posted LinkedIn. So somehow I believe in that, actually. And as I said, that where we have 10 meter of wide green corridor in a street, definitely median cycle track is the best, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Sarika. I think you brought out some very interesting points. One is you talked about blind spots on the median cycle track, especially when you want to make turns. I think that is something we'll also look into as we try to develop this concept further. And thanks for sharing that article from Carlos. I think this is something that we'll all be very interested to. Okay, Ashwati has shared it right away on the chat. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. So thanks, Sarika. And I have a quick question for you. You talked about the design in Gurgaon, and that on the side there are very few interruptions happening, even though there are a lot of property entrances on the side. That's what you shared, right?
Yeah.
So how do you prevent other vehicles getting into the cycle track? Because the normal response is to put bollards there.
So actually, we have
Yeah,
put bollards, but it is not as close that a cyclist cannot cross that bollard. He need to get down or cross the bollard. It's not like that. Luckily, we have very good enforcement, so no two-wheeler is riding in that path.
yeah,
And it is all about enforcement, because if you put the bollards very closely, because what happens, a cyclist and motorcyclist take same space when they are riding it. So uh, there we can only prevent the two-wheelers to go to the track is by enforcement. And again, capacity building, these are the two things. So heavy chalaning happening there. And actually, not even 2% two-wheelers are riding, except from the delivery boys. They are the one who try to brake, but no regular two-wheelers who are commuting in that road is actually violating the rule. That
yeah. I
is
think
one thing. Yeah.
yeah, I think enforcement is key, obviously. And one of the struggles we have, at least in the cities, the city that I stay in, Ahmedabad, and also the cities that I worked in, is enforcement is really bad. And unless enforcement is there, all good designs and intentions don't go anywhere. Then we are back to square one.
It's
Bollards
bad
get broke.
everywhere here in Gurgaon also. It's bad, but you need to really work hard with the police to do the
Yes,
enforcement.
got
So
it.
that is,
I have a
and also
question for
had
Sarika.
to do some corporate, like as I said, that it's an industrial area. So there are hundreds of these offices along this. So a few offices has given us traffic marshals actually. They voluntarily given us 6 traffic marshals to look into this matter, so that we are lucky on that actually. So we have this private traffic marshals who got ID card from traffic police, and they are doing this enforcement. We always have scarcity of traffic police in every city in India. So that
Yeah.
is one thing we have adopted, that slowly their behavior will change. It will take time because it's a very newly built. Except that, as I said, only 1 to 2% two-wheelers are, again, the delivery boys mostly are trying to use that path, but no one else, no other two-wheelers. And secondly, this whole 94 entries and exits I said to the buildings has been designed such a way that the vehicle has to wait if a cyclist or a pedestrian is crossing, not the other way actually. So it is how this is the little design principle that we have adopted.
Yeah, Sarika, thanks for sharing. I think we all need to study about the design at Udyog Vihar in more detail. Thanks for sharing that. We'll move on. Ranjit. So Ranjit is one of the most avid cyclists I've known. He comes to meetings also on his cycle. He's all over on his cycle all the time in Pune, right? So again, as a user, Ranjit, do you think you will ride on a median bicycle lane? The designs that we shared on the presentation, do you think that is safe, comfortable for you?
Yes, I think definitely I see merit in this kind of a design because, as you pointed out, there's a whole lot of friction along the edge. And cyclists are not only sensitive to conflicts with vehicles, which we highlighted, or which you guys highlighted, but also pedestrians. One of the issues with the FC Road and JM Road cycle lanes or cycle tracks is that actually they're wonderful pedestrian spaces, and therefore cyclists cannot really use them unless you're just going for a very slow, casual ride. But people like me have no patience for pedestrians, and though we like them, I wish most of the time I could get them out of my way, certainly. And so, and this is an issue, and therefore a lot of cyclists then end up using the motor carriage because they have much smoother and cyclists do tend to like to go fast, and so therefore any way in which we can get this continuous obstruction-free corridor will become very critical. And although you have shown designs for slightly wider roads, I think we should even consider these kinds of solutions on narrow roads, less width than 30 meters also, because I don't see any reason. I don't know if you didn't go below 30 meters for any specific reason. But once you have the cycle lane in the middle, then you have the motor vehicle lanes on both sides. And so I think we should look at that. The other thing that I just wanted to quickly point out is that if we think that this is something that, as they said, that it could be at least given as an option, then since the IRC guidelines are currently being revised, and I don't know at what stage they are. I remember we were asked to submit some comments on it, which wasn't too long ago. So hopefully they're still being done. Then at least we should put that in there. And the reason why I say that is because, as my colleagues also put on the chat box, we are now heavily saying that IRC is statutory. And we are heavily saying that you can't go away from IRC. And so I'm always a little worried when people like us, well-intentioned people, want to experiment with designs. But as we know, in all advanced countries, you can't do that. It has to be part of your code. And this is the first time that the government has now made IRC guidelines statutory under the Motor Vehicles Act. So let's put it in there is what I would say. Even though it may be a little, maybe it needs more work. I do see that. but I'm just wondering whether we should do that also, because the side is also it's also often dug up. There are always the utilities is an issue, so that we escape that by putting it in the middle. But I also worry a little bit about the fact that what we face in terms of putting in cycling infrastructure is often not the design issue, but really it's about taking space away from motor vehicles.
Yeah.
And there we're it's no different whether we put it in the middle or we put it on the side. In fact, when cities put it on the side, they're often hoping that they can just remove the curb or reduce the cycle lane so that they can then grab that space for motor vehicles. It's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be harder to do if it's in the median, especially if you put a slightly sturdier differentiator between the median cycle lane and the motor vehicle lane. But the issue of the cycle track not being used and seeming to be empty is something that, and I'm not saying that can be solved through design. I mean, it can be solved through design in the sense that you would expect to see more cyclists using it, but that's still going to be a battle for all of us who have to constantly keep fighting that battle, that it doesn't matter even if there are not enough cyclists right now. We have to continue to push to get more cyclists, and let's build that infrastructure. It certainly helps avoid perhaps street vendors and things like that, who should then get enough space on the edges. Sarika was the only one who mentioned a flyover, so I'm a little worried about that. So how does it work with flyovers? I know all of us here would wish our cities didn't build another flyover at all, but that's still going to take some time. And to Akash's point about metro versus BRT, I agree. BRT is, as it is, fairly complicated. So perhaps getting a median cycle lane is going to be tough. Sadly, Abhijit, we may not need to contend with that because I think BRT is all but gone.
Yeah.
But for metro, in fact, what I would say is that we should say all metros should have the median cycle lane. Because I don't see any reason why, in fact, you can't have it, because the metro access is all going to happen through your overhead which are going to come from the footpaths.
Yeah.
And so the median is going to be, I think it's going to be quite free in that sense. And so, in fact, if we can get, I mean, North has been pushing quite stupidly to have these elevated highways along metros. But if we can also push for cycle lanes that go along the metro and therefore get the metro people interested in this idea, because I know that metro people have been talking about last mile connectivity and what. I don't know if they're serious about it, but at least they talk about it. But then maybe we could suggest this to them, because in Pune, when we had this thing going on, Ganeshkin Road, there was a person from the Central Road Research Institute, and he, in fact, I don't know again whether he was serious, but he said that once this project is complete, there's a lot of construction going on, why don't you introduce cycle lanes in the middle? And this is along the metro corridor. So at least there was one person who seemed to think in a completely different context that one could introduce the cycle lanes in the middle of the road. There will always be many issues related to access. How do I get there? How do I get off that? I am not trained enough to understand any of your junction drawings, and I know that junctions are always complicated and very, very tough. But IRC is now introducing this two-wheeler lane, which I think is a terrible idea. But I believe there's a new guideline that's going to come out on that. I don't know how they're going to design junctions with two-wheeler lanes being separated out. But I think it certainly seems like an idea that we should push and see what happens. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I think very interesting. I think IRC guidelines, I think it's a good way to push this agenda and have options. At least let's have the options there. People can choose from them. Right. Thanks, Ranjit. We'll move on to Sonal. Before we move on, I just have to request, because we are now at 6:24, we may go a little over time by about 10 minutes. I hope that is okay. Yeah, so please stay on. I hope that's fine. So Sonal, yeah, okay, hi, I saw you. So Sonal, you work with DULT, you work with government, and DULT uh, took a lot of initiative to do cycle tracks in Bangalore, both on the outer ring road and also through the, I've seen some cycle tracks in the inner city also, along Church Street probably, uh, which are quite good in design. But I also noticed that these are mainly along edges which don't have entrances. These are along big properties. I think this is also what Akash had hinted when he had talked about large green spaces along one side. How was the experience or the for the ORR where you had put the bicycle tracks on the right hand side of the service road? Did you actually get user feedback?
So, yeah, I mean, when we did it for ORR, it was almost a median cycle track, right?
Yes.
Because it was not along the property edges, but it was on the median of the service lane, which was, adjoining the main carriageway. So what had happened is there are a lot of properties that are commercial properties on the service road side, right? For example, there is a big grocery store and things like that. So a lot of them actually, I mean, in any case, either on the edge or on the median, people have issues with cycle tracks. They're always saying that you're taking away space from, my parking or my basically driving a car and giving it to a cyclist, and which is not okay with them. So that was the case even with the property, the properties that were there on ORR. So they had that issue, and a lot of vandalism also started happening uh, from such property owners who, came and asked their loading trucks to come and, run over these, bollards and damage them and things like that. And we found a lot of such, violations happening and wrong side driving happening and things like that. So a lot of enforcement is also actually required, as I think Sarika already said. Whether you do it on the median side or on the, so there are some of these common issues that you'll face. Like everyone said, it's very contextual, and we did not do that for the city center because in the city center, most of our roads in Bangalore, I think a lot of you might know, are all one ways. And they're all 18 meters to 24 meters roads, which are one ways for traffic. But we could find space for doing these curbside cycle tracks, which were along with the footpath. And that had less resistance from, people. Because it's part of the footpath, and nobody cares what you're doing on that side of the road, because you're not taking away their carriageway space. So that way we had lesser resistance when we did that. Also, about the larger point of whether we should have a median cycle lane or not, I think it all depends on the context, and it's all about what you choose. I mean, accessibility versus mobility, right? So for neighborhood streets and for commercial streets, for example, which has also about land use and road hierarchy, where there are, good amount of land uses which are commercial, or, people want to go and shop and have shorter commutes, 3 to 5 kilometer of cycle commutes. So for such roads, I think it's better to have it on the edges, while on the highways, expressways, where, mobility is more important than, getting onto the properties. I think such solutions can be actually explored, and yeah, I think people should not generally create a problem. So that's what is my take on this.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Sonal. And so I think the experiment on the ORR, yeah, probably didn't work because of, as you said, of the position from shop owners around the side. Also, maybe it also didn't work because of the temporary nature of the segregation at that point. I think it was done as part of the cycle for change challenge, right?
In no way, though, it was temporary. I mean, we used the same bollards that they used for example, the bus lane on the same
Yes.
ORR. Of course, we called it pop-up cycle lane because, we did it in a, very fast fast-paced way. And it was quite quick. During the COVID time, it just happened to pop up. So that's why we called it a pop-up lane. But otherwise, in no way we meant for it to be a temporary lane.
Okay.
In fact, we have asked the metro to put it back while they've finished the construction of metro on that particular stretch, both cycle lane as well as bus lane. So hopefully, when the metro is completing its work, it's going to take up these two infrastructure projects.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sonal.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll move to Bhairavi. Hi, Bhairavi.
Yeah, hi.
So Bhairavi and I have been doing some work in Surat on safe routes to school. And Bhairavi, in the context of the work that you are doing in Surat, also you stay in Valsad, kind of a smaller city with narrow streets. As a user, do you think median cycle tracks would be something that would work in smaller cities? And also about Surat, because Surat has a lot of roads which have service roads. And I remember seeing these red painted cycle tracks, which were all taken over by parking in Surat. So your thoughts on this, Valsad and Surat both?
Yeah, thank you, Abhijit. So basically, I am not an expert on infrastructure, and I would share my thoughts as a user.
Yes.
Ashwati, Sonal, they all have described or Akash, they all have described about a city having multiple type of infrastructure, be it it can be a median cycle track or along the roadside. Some may be segregated, some may not be segregated. As a road user, whether it is Valsad or whether it is Surat or any other city, as a cyclist and a road user, my primary concern or anyone's primary concern would be road safety. So any cycle track which is giving me that safety while I'm riding my cycle or anyone else is riding a cycle is going to be successful. So uh, right now the cycle tracks. So the city where I live in, Valsad, is it's a very small town, and it has very narrow roads. Yeah, there is one arterial road which is I think 7 7 14 like 7 meters on a single side, where we tried for cycle tracks, but practically it is not possible. So when we look at smaller cities within the city, I won't agree. Like as a user, I won't agree that uh, any cycle track would be possible. It is more of behavioral change or other people understanding and giving priority to pedestrian and cyclists. It is more of that. And everyone, riding or like driving or riding a cycle, driving a motor vehicle or a cycle, or a pedestrian walking, they have to they have to be they have to be mindful of using their own spaces and giving respect to either the other road users within a small city. This is what I look at as a user. In Surat, yes, you rightly said that we have this red patches of cycle tracks. Lot of things are happening within these smart cities or metro cities or the largest metro cities and the Mahanagar Palika or Nagar Palika. Again, it depends on it has a mixed use. So in some places, cycle tracks are if they're not there, then also it's okay because those streets are already the vehicle movement is quite slow. So pedestrian and cyclists they can easily move along with the slow traffic movement. There are places where the road width is quite there is quite it is large, and we have segregated cycle tracks which are quite widely used. Median cycle tracks would be useful where, as Ranjit and as I think Sarika shared, where we have a long distance and there are green scapes, and there's a distance which has to be covered by a cyclist where he doesn't have to move towards a property or for shopping or for cafe or something like that. The distance has to be long. There and median cycle tracks would work. And as a as Bikes India or as bikes, we have this ambitious goal of 50 by 30. That is 50% of the city trips by 2030. And lately, initially we all were very enthusiastic that yeah, we are going to achieve that goal. But lately we have seen that um, cycling has, it has decreased because of road accidents happening. People are not ready to ride a cycle nowadays. When we talk to them of like learning cycling or using cycle to work or even for health purpose in the morning hours, the number of cyclists have started declining. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what we have seen quite lately. Like once considered a life skill, cycling has learning to even cycle in children has become optional nowadays. So that is my concern. And as advocating for sustainable mobility, whatever it's a median cycle track or it is on the side, like on the side of the road, whatever, it has to be segregated, it has to be safe. This is what I would like to say. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Bhairavi. We'll move to Arjit. So Arjit, I kept you waiting.
It was a long wait.
I know you have a lot of views on this. But rather than asking you something very specific, okay, I'm going to, ask you a few questions that have come up in the chat, right? And this is related more to the safety. So there is a question on poor road discipline in Indian cities, and would a median cycle track not be unsuitable? Another question which talks about median bicycle lane sounds like a good idea, but considering that the rightmost lane, which is generally the faster lane, how safe would just having some fences and boulders be? So would you want to kind of take these two questions on safety first?
So, sorry to disappoint Abhijit, but there's something that I do want to share before I answer any questions. And I think I'm a chartered accountant, I'm not an urban planner. So I think anything around safety, I'm sure we have so many great urban planners out here who can design roads that can address that question. But I really want to bring in a practical perspective as to why I started thinking in this direction. See, when I started PBS 10 years ago, I never asked for infrastructure because I felt that as a private bike share operator, unless I build some critical mass and I show some traction to the government, I really won't get much audience from the government. And so that's what I did over the last 10 years. That's what I worked towards in trying to build some critical mass, and probably have had some success in making PBS work. So when time came, when I felt now I have done enough to prove and I should go and ask the government for infrastructure, I was naturally disappointed, and I could see that there was a lot of reluctance from administrators. And so I went deep and I tried to understand why they are reluctant about it. It's not that they don't understand, right? And of course, the central policies, the smart cities mission, all is heading towards this direction. But while a center makes a policy, the implementation, the willingness to do is just not there. And so I believe that before we address safety of cyclists, we need to address the administrator's safety in terms of taking these decisions. And what I could understand is that the cycle tracks have failed in the past, so they are worried of attempting it again. The media is playing a very bad role. They criticize if the cycle tracks fail, and they criticize if the cycle tracks are removed. So it's really not playing a constructive role. And as a result, these administrators are afraid to take decisions in this direction. And hence, what we see is generally more tokenism around cycle tracks. There's no long term thinking around it. It's just to comply with the smart cities mission checklist, and that's it. So, political will is also missing. That's one of the reasons the administrators are not willing to take this decision. And that's because if you try to create a cycle track, the first opposition that will come is from retailers. Because typically in India, you have the shops, then you have some vacant parking space in front of the shops, followed by a footpath, and then you have a cycle track. So when you create a cycle track, you block access for the customers of these retailers. And hence, that's where the opposition comes in. So, and even if somehow we figure out to solve all this, how do you educate 140 crore audience to respect cyclists, to respect pedestrians? How do you educate hawkers to not encroach upon the cycle tracks? I mean, you can't blame the enforcement, or you can't expect the enforcement to address all these issues, right? So that got me thinking that do we want to solve the problem, or is there a way we can eliminate the problem altogether by creating a path to least resistance, by reducing the number of friction points and then trying to solve only the ones that remain. And that was the thought process behind thinking of median cycle tracks. In all honesty, I understand every panelist has talked about safety here first, but I'm slightly impatient, and I would say I would like to address speed over safety. I think speed will bring in more cyclists for whom this is a need than a want. And if we have more cyclists visible, I'm sure that will change the perception around safety for the wannabe cyclists or who are on the edge. And I'm sure once we have enough visible traction, I'm sure through design we can always address safety in the end. So that's all that I want to answer. Would be happy to take some questions if there are, Abhijit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of opening this up for questions. It's 6:40, so we are kind of 10 minutes past the time we said we will complete. So for those of you, even from the panelists who have something else to attend to, I want to thank all of you for being here and for sharing your thoughts. If you can stay on for 5-7 minutes more, that would be great, but otherwise it's fine. We can have, there are a lot of questions in the chat box, and I'm going to kind of throw them open. One question was obviously about safety. Would Akash or Ashwati want to respond to that about safety in median cycle tracks?
See, basically, I don't know what is being thought about as the dangers of the median cycle track. But if any designer is going to propose a median cycle track, just like on the side you have a proper buffer between the vehicular and the cyclist for speed and so many other considerations. I mean, the same or in fact more will happen on the median cycle track. I also like Ranjit's point that anyways we have where the metro is coming, we'll be having a central median, to accommodate the column. So maybe at the column we can have a little squeeze, but the rest of the place we'll have a like ample space to really do water and all of that planting, and it'll be like as if you're cycling to a literally like a garden corridor. So that can be very interesting. And safety, personally, at the junction, if you're right in the center, and the way you have shown how how they will cross, I don't see the issue. The only issue is the the access of the cyclist, leisure cyclist, like what somebody was saying, to cafes and things around. So I mean, if you are from that city and there is a cafe you want to go to, we would take the right turn and go off on the sidewalk and access that particular cafe. Otherwise, you're pretty much free to go at a decent speed. What Ranjit also said, while he likes all the pedestrians on JM Road, but when he's cycling, he's not really impressed if they're encroaching his space. So I do understand that. And as a cyclist, I mean, I also cycle sometimes. So it's like once you're on a cycle, you can achieve those speeds as long as those impediments are not there. And once you do that, then you feel really good because, you're like probably sometimes even faster than the car. Like in Delhi, most of the cars are stuck in traffic jams. And imagine you want to cycle zooming past the at the median and enjoying the flowers and enjoying the landscape and then going through. I think it's a dream.
Yeah. Thanks, Akash.
Is plantation possible, Akash, if you do the median? I mean, if you wanted reasonable shading, not just the metro, but otherwise?
My wife is a landscape architect, so she'll not let us do anything without plantation.
If I may add, again trying to give a context. See, we are a developing country, and the left will constantly be dug up for some or the other development works. So even if you create a beautiful masterpiece, you are always scared that some idiotic department is going to come and dig it up. You will never see interruptions happening in median unless there's a grand plan of a metro or a flyover. Other than that, the median is generally not touched upon. It's linear. You have more chaos on the left, but you have linearity on the median of the road. Even from a traffic point of view, It's the rightmost lane where you'll find a more disciplined traffic, and it's those usually the nuisance mongers, the overtakers, they try to find gaps within the non-linearity of the left side of the road to overtake, and that's more unsafe from a practical point of view. So these are the some pointers, and I am sorry, but I disagree with the panelists who say that a median cycle lane is a better idea in outskirts and not in the city centers. That completely defies the purpose, because the whole idea of median lane is to fight the property side interruptions and to cut across the city and give them speed. And rather, it's on the outskirts where the property interruptions might not be there, and probably a curbside cycle track may work there. So these are my thoughts.
Okay, interesting. So
Abhijit, I want to add something.
yes, Sarika,
So
please.
we all agreed that median cycle track is possible where there is a metro line going on. Also, I just want to give examples. Also, we a lot of us discussing about when someone come and dig up, and someone again again why they come and dig up, because we don't plan these services when we are developing a cycle track or footpath. Tender Shore, again, a best example. Also, in the street that we have developed, we have given a segregated duct for all these services. So, for 50 years, this track is not going to dug up. There is nothing below this track of 4 meter. Okay, so there is no way that it is going to dig up. So there is different design elements we need to consider when we are redeveloping a street. If we are providing electrical wires, fiber optic cables, telephone lines under a footpath or cycle track, which is right now is the practice in our country, then of course people will dig up. Some department will come and dig up. That's why they do this interlocking tile things, which is again, neither it is good for pedestrians or cyclists. So there are new, like we need to consider that we need to look into all these elements when we are designing cycle track and footpath, so that it coexists for 30 years, 50 years. That is how we need to relook into our right of way. And also, we all agree that where it is possible, in a 30-meter road where the carriageway is 10-meter only, how you are going to provide median cycle lane? That is like, as you said, it is not so black and white. It all depends on the existing land use. If it is an old city area already, it's a developed city, developed town already, it is not that easy. And as I said, it will have a safety concerns in both kind of design, but we need to do the best design. And of course, we all agreed that below metro line is it is very much easy to develop this kind of cycle track.
So Sarika, I think point taken.
Tender Shore Road is what, 10-year-old? Yeah.
So Sarika, point taken that we need to plan our services in such a way that they don't get dug up. I think the larger issue that we want to bring up here is, given the reality that we have right now. You may get one road in Udyog Vihar after a lot of effort. But like Ranjit said, a very beautiful road, Jangli Maharaj Road or FC Road. And I think I didn't even think about this, but till the time he said it, that there is actually a conflict between pedestrians and cyclists, which is something that even I did not
It
know
is.
about or
Yeah,
think
I've
about.
seen that.
Right. So the point is not that one is right and the other is wrong.
There.
That is not the intention or the point of this entire discussion. The point or the intention is to bring a discussion up there with people who are really committed to cycling, who are passionate about cycling, who believe in this. So we are all here who are converted. We know why we want cycling. We know all of that. We're now trying to figure out why in the last 20 years that I have been working in this field, I have not been able to see a city which can say, I have a cycling network which works. We have isolated cases here and there, which are best practices, but we really don't have a citywide network. Even the road in Gurugram is just 4.5 or 5 kilometers. What Urban Lab did in Gandhinagar is 5.5 kilometers, which is not really going to do anything at the city level. Given the current reality, would median cycles work better is the question that we are trying to answer. if we can get everything in place, enforcement, management, behavior, and services, yeah, sure. I think cycle tracks on the left would work better.
There's just one more
Yes, Sonal.
stakeholder you'll have to actually convince, and that is the traffic engineers of the city, which are filled in your, ULBs, and most of
Yeah.
the departments have these traffic engineers who are taught, I mean, that, arterial roads, they are meant for efficiency, right? Efficiency of vehicles. So when you interrupt them at every 500 meters, they'll have a huge issue of, why a median cycle lane is coming when it can come on the side and not interrupt traffic at
Yes.
every 500 meters. So that is a little bit of a concern that I see in the median cycle lanes on arterial roads. That is 24 meters plus roads, actually.
And in fact, to add to what Sonal is saying, it's a big concern and something that even I did not think about, or my team did not think about, is existing flyovers. How do we deal with existing flyovers with median bicycle lanes is going to be a big challenge. It's one of the reasons why we could not put BRT in many cities, places, junctions where they had already built flyovers, unless we split the flyovers. Now, who's going to split flyovers for cycles? And that is also a reality we have to look at. So I don't know.
Why
Maybe
not? Why not carry the lane over the flyover as well?
Sure, with electric bicycle lanes, you could bicycles, you could think about that. Sure. But
Maybe
Ashwini, I just wanted to ask you something here.
Mhm.
In the guidebook that you talked about, have you looked at this also, the flyovers and median bicycle lanes?
So no, Abhijit, we hadn't looked at the flyover. So we were just sort of giving them examples. We gave them the curbside and the median as the examples that they could use, but we didn't look at, resolving every issue that might be in the Indian context.
Right.
One thing that I would like to raise in, like, which I'd like to sort of agree to the point that Sonal mentioned, like, Arjit, you were speaking about how in the last, when you went and asked for infrastructure, there's been like this pushback for curbside. If you imagine that pushback would be less when you ask for median side, let me just burst that bubble. The pushback is going to be there. Whether it is median side or whether it is curbside, we'll have all of us have to have perseverance and patience and like all the courage and all the effort that is needed to ask for this infrastructure either ways. So I would just like to let you know that no matter where, we'll have to, like really put our foot down, and that's not going to change.
Yeah.
Can I respond? Yeah. Yes, Akash. Yeah.
So, see, first of all, that thing about the mid-block crossing. So, when we are doing TOD planning now for cities, and there's a recommendation anyways about the road grid being at 500 meters and a pedestrian cut being there at 250 odd meters. So that is already part of IRC, and some guidelines have already mentioned it. So now, if we do not, just because the road is wide enough, but suppose it's Ashram Road in Ahmedabad, or or even JM Road in Pune. So there are so many people on that road, and you would need to cross over. So I think the mid-block crossings are a function of that. So and if they're getting mandated at a national level on the TOD norms at so and so. So this problem about how do you access the site with 250 meters, nothing. I mean, if you have to cross over, I'm okay with 500 also, frankly. I mean, you could just come back to your cafe. So that was one. Second was that this whole pushback about cycling infrastructure and on your flyover, what do you do? So I think, when we're talking about any system, like when they have cars, they have petrol pumps and whatever. So when we do cycle tracks, we tend to miss out on, where do the toilets go? Where does a repair shop go? Where does a cyclist take some rest? Where does he buy some water if he's thirsty? So the under flyover spaces, I think, are perfect to give him that kind of a break. So I would take my cyclist down, bring him inside the under flyover, let him enjoy the shade and have a party, and then once he recharges, he can get back.
Okay, it's interesting. So again, I'll come in because of the time. So we are 6:54. So unless we have something extraordinary to say, we should conclude. And we will also be compiling all the discussions here and then sharing it with all the panelists. Arjit, you have something else? One more comment?
I just have one closing remark and more of an appeal to all the urban planners out there. You understand this best. This is your subject at the end of the day. All my closing remark is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And please incorporate the practical challenges. And I think we all have a huge sense of responsibility, because another failed cycle track is only going to close our chances of realizing the shared vision that we have. So I think we have to be what to say, aggressive. We have to talk loud. We have to talk about of a pan city cycle network in one go. And what a median cycle lane does is provide a very low cost of experiment, where you can start with just planters as a barrier between the carriageway and this, and you can reduce the risk for the IS officer who's convinced to take this decision for you. We just need one IS officer who's willing to take that risk for us, and one city to prove this works. And I'm sure we'll find an answer for the entire country. That's my closing remarks. Thank you, Abhijit, for giving me this opportunity. Really appreciate this.
Thanks, Arjit.
In fact, just to add to that, Abhijit, in fact, our traffic joint commissioner here in Bangalore had asked if we can do a median cycle track on, the roads which have metro. Can we explore that, is what he said, because, we anyway have the, space below the metro.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you guys are doing anything here, you can probably talk to the joint.
I think we all can come together and make a design and do a test run, and then, if it takes, if it catches the fancy of people, I think it's a pretty good, it will set up some good example as to, how you can reuse that space in the median.
Yeah.
Worth a try. I mean, all of us can collaborate. It's not about, amongst us, it's like bigger cause that we promote cycling.
Yeah, Akash. Okay, great. I'll hand it over to Anand to conclude. Thank you, everyone, once again.
Thanks, Abhijit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Abhijit.
Thank you so much. I will not take your time further to really acknowledge all of you to give your perspective on this topic. We will be, as Abhijit already shared, that we will be compiling this discussion and give it to you for, so that you can all take it further together. So thank you, and wish you all a very nice evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Anand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm ending this meeting now. Yes.
And happy bicycle day.
Yes.
Happy bicycle day.
Happy World Bicycle
Yes,
Day.
Sarika. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.